Our story begins in downtown Hong Kong. A marketplace is bustling with activity. Here we introduce a man as he orders noodles and gets one immediately thrown in front of him. He begins to severely criticize the food while the lady shopkeeper ignores him completely. She just continued to cook. The man carried on like a judge on a cooking show, barking review after technical review. Then the man suddenly accuses the lady that the food is still unclean, constantly nagging her until she gives up and hands him a tissue roll so he can clean it up himself. But the man isn't giving up and even asking to get paid so he can see a doctor. He then reveals that he's none other than the famed god of cookery. This stuns the woman in disbelief, so the man removed his glasses so she can have a closer look. The scene then changes into an army of chefs paying homage to an important-looking person sitting on a throne. With a glass of wine in hand and wearing a shiny gold medal. Various great-looking food are slowly presented one by one in front of him. The host then announces with much excitement that the man is none other than the god of cookery and he'll be the judge of tonight's competition. As cameras flash left and right, he then leaps into the air while cameras follow and he immediately lands in front of the first dish. The first entry is called King's Fried Rice and it was prepared so meticulously. The judge then wastes no time in explaining how the dish was made. There were actually many steps involved in the preparation of this simple-looking fried rice that is not obvious when it is first looked at but only when tasted. Such observation shows the skill of the god of cookery. He gave praise to the chef and told him that he deserves his title. However, he commented that the rice was too soft and that he should have used day-old rice as was common practice anyway. Because of this, the judge gave him a score of 0 and sent him on his way. The next dish is called multi-fish and it looked really complex. Despite this, the judge was able to figure out that the dish was actually made up of 5 different fishes stitched together to make one whole fish. Then each side was cooked differently to bring out a different flavor for each side, but as a whole will have 10 different flavors. However, the judge scored it 0 points for its looks. The next dish is called the Golden Robe, which showcases the chef's very intricate cutting skills on a block of bean curd which took a whole day to finish. But because it took so long to make, the smell was already bad. The chef then admitted that the dish only showcased his fast carving skills. The judge asked him to show his left hand, which has a nasty cut. He was then given 0 points. The last dish is called the Secret Goose. It was then given a 0 score for already being cold, but the dish itself has a hidden surprise. The actual food was inside the goose all along and it kept it hot and flavorful. The chef then proudly declared that it can be eaten now, but despite all this, the score was still 0. The crowd has gone wild with the result. The judge said that it's ugly. The chef objected that his ingredients were beautiful, but the judge clarified that it's the chef who is ugly and that he has lost his appetite, so he would rather not look at him. The chef couldn't believe what he heard. The judge recommended that he has potential if he first gets surgery on his face. The chef then hides his face in shame, but photographers forced him to open his hands for a clear shot. The host then asks what makes a perfect dish. The judge then begins to prepare his answer through what looks like honey. He begins to mix it up, speeding as he goes, until finally it's ready to be pulled and executed. Through a series of graceful twists and turns, the honey-like substance flow and slowly take form. Next, he carefully grabs flower petals and started to throw them in the air, making it rain. It was then revealed that the word is heart. In the form of a dessert, we rely on it to make the perfect dish. And apparently the dessert was so good, you will scream delicious. The man, Stephen, is now shown congratulating the chefs from the competition. The chefs showed their gratitude to the god of cookery as one by one they shake his hand. The last chef, however, let slip that he's thankful for the commission. It's now revealed that Stephen paid the chefs to act and put on a show during the competition, and he appears to have taken offense because it was mentioned. His manager wishes to take advantage of his popularity by selling his own brand of instant noodles. He asks Richard, his manager's nephew, where he studied, and he stutters, Harvard and Cambridge, to which Stephen mockingly laughs at together with his team. The next scene shows Bull Tong begging Stephen to be part of his team even as an assistant. He mentioned that he graduated from the Chinese Cookery Academy. Stephen is reluctant but tests him by asking him to poop in front of the lifts, an act which Tong gladly did. He started removing his trousers and even has tissue prepared. Tong's dedication to follow orders to the letter convinced Stephen to hire him eventually. Here, Bull Tong is seen bringing a bottle of wine to Stephen, but he accidentally trips and breaks the expensive bottle. Stephen helped him up and even sat him on the chair in front and offered him cake. Surprised, Bull asked why, and Stephen said that he can be kind sometimes, but he suddenly slammed Tong's face on the cake, humiliating him. He revealed that his success is due to his unpredictability. During the opening day of his restaurant, Stephen is instructing a waiter to make things hard for the customer for profit by making them uncomfortable and other things. As usual, he also insults this person. Bull Tong, now an assistant, advises Stephen that a fan will present him flowers and that it's not a paid one. He mentioned that it's a girl student, and this forces a flashback to when Stephen was chasing the girl of his dreams in his high school days. Anticipating to greet her, the pretty girl greeted him first instead, which caused Stephen to lose track of himself and squirm for joy. He's still squirming all the way to the present, before Bull Tong woke him up. Tong then presented the girl, who actually looks like a guy in a student costume picking their nose. As they ran to Stephen excitedly, Stephen quickly caused a distraction to divert everyone's attention. He then kicked the fan away from him, and they were sent flying. Stephen now introduces his new instant noodle brand with a name so outlandish and targeted to lovers. Even Jesus and Confucius were given special mentions. The set meal is actually really expensive at almost $100. Bull Tong suddenly started to taste test the meal but got into criticizing it severely. One by one, he said, was exactly what Stephen told the noodle lady at the start of the film. It also even has poop inside still, exactly what he said at the start. Tong is so angry at how something so low quality is sold for as high as $100. He then started to provoke Stephen in front of everyone and even questioning his skills. A furious Stephen grabs the nearest knife, but Tong skillfully deflects and sends it flying at Stephen's poster, decapitating it. Then it showed that all Tong used was a spoon. He then transformed into a chef's uniform in an instant, complete with a chef's hat. Then, with a series of martial arts-like movement, Bull Tong begins to prepare the noodles. In one smooth motion, he boiled the noodles, cooled it, and plated it. He then artfully slammed the table and sent the ingredients and even the knife flying. He caught the knife and begins slicing the ingredients mid-air. He pierces a turnip and shapes it then and there. As the ingredients fall back down, Tong poured the soup and presented his amazing work, which is miles better than Stephen's. A group of policemen suddenly enters and presents Stephen with a warrant. Apparently people got sick from the beef in his restaurant. As he is handcuffed and struggling, he then realized that he has been set up by both Bull Tong and his manager. Grinning as he was led away. And now we're back to the present. Stephen is seen begging for money from the lady but was abruptly beat up by gangsters. He quickly regained his composure and says he's fine, but the lady carried him away so he won't be beaten up anymore, with the gangsters giving up chase. As Stephen lays on the ground unconscious and bloody, he was awoken by someone, and it turns out to be the shop lady from earlier. The lady gently wiped the blood off his face and asked if he's hungry. The shop lady gave him a delicious bowl of pork barbecue, which Stephen gratefully eats. The shop lady and another man are arguing on who gets exclusive rights to either the tasty beef balls or the pissing shrimps. They can't agree on terms and the negotiations are going nowhere, but Stephen whispered a solution to combine them both, which angered the man. Stephen was caught and was about to get punished by getting his finger chopped off, but the lady came to his rescue and at the last second grabbed the knife. With bloodied hands, she warned the man not to mess with one of her own. Outraged, the man lifted the table to throw it, but a butcher knife gracefully descends and smashes through the table, narrowly missing the man. The man left only to come back with reinforcements later. Stephen and the lady appear to be watching something on the table. As the man nears the two, a gang member is anticipating the action but didn't hear anything. He's surprised to find out that the man has joined Stephen and the lady in watching the table. It was actually a bouncing pissing beef ball that they're all watching. Curious, the man tried eating the pissing beef ball and it immediately started spraying juice all over the place. As if in trance, the man is transported into a happy time in his life. While gracefully running on the beach, he sings praises for the beef ball and how the two flavors complement each other. He appears to be having so much fun. He's still happy as he was sent back to reality. Confident that they have a great product, they all combined forces and opened their first shop. As they grin like idiots, they all wait for their first customer. It didn't take long for their shop to get famous, and Stephen is slowly starting to regain his fame. When asked why people like eating the beef balls, a young student claims that it helped him get smarter. The shop lady became prettier, and a team member has bulked up and gained lots of confidence after eating it. But the real secret is its elasticity. You can even play ping pong using it. They seem to be having fun. After securing a loan from his ex-manager, Stephen started shipping the beef balls in cans. His ex-manager thought that Stephen will use the money to open restaurants and fail in the process, couldn't believe they've been outsmarted. They all had a meeting, but it quickly turned into a brawl when the lady hit the manager with a garbage can. After a bit of backstory, we learn that the shop lady has been a long-time fan of the god of cookery and that she got heavily injured in the past trying to defend his honor. The shop lady was found out and was a bit embarrassed, but still confessed her love for him. Overwhelmed, Stephen rushes out to take a taxi and head to China. The taxi is shown speeding away, leaving a heartbroken shop lady behind. In China, Stephen is on the phone asking for directions and appears to be having trouble looking for the Chinese Cookery Academy. The shop lady suddenly appeared to have followed Stephen all the way to China to bring him his ingredients. Suddenly, an assassin appeared out of nowhere and tried to kill Stephen, but the lady jumped in front of him to save him, and she got shot instead. 1 month later, at the famous Jumbo floating restaurant in Hong Kong, an important event is about to take place. A well-dressed biltong walks along the restaurant floor with an entourage. The host declares that it's the competition for the new god of cookery, and it starts after 1 minute. Believing that Stephen will have no time to make it, Biltong is nervous nonetheless, as he watches the doors in suspense. A stranger on a boat appears to be making his way to the restaurant. He made a flashy jump and even walked on water, before crashing into a window and softly landing, revealing himself to be Stephen. A wild monk suddenly appears and introduces himself as Wet Dream. After a few wise words, he appears to have started levitating, but he was actually being carried away by security to be thrown out. After the judge hits the gong, the competition has begun. Another flashback shows us that Stephen barely escaped the assassin. A perfectly timed truck came along and he quickly got on it but was thrown out when it hit a road bump. As Stephen rolled downhill, he eventually stumbled across a Shaolin Monastery. Back at the competition, the judge mercilessly disqualifies almost all the competitors for various reasons, such as lack of concentration and juggling skills. In yet another flashback, Stephen is shown trying to escape. It was abruptly cut short as he is introduced to the 18 brassmen of the Shaolin Monastery. After a stylish pose, the men started to casually beat Stephen with fists and chairs as punishment for trying to escape. Biltong changed costumes again into a motley did as well. Stephen then revealed that the Chinese Cookery Academy is indeed the kitchen of the Shaolin Monastery. A series of martial arts hand movements are shown, and even a chair. Cornered, Biltong leapt through the air and uses his flying skills to attack Stephen. The judge enthusiastically described what it can do in a funny way. Stephen was waiting with a Shaolin chair which he uses to hit a flying tong. Stephen then passionately beats up Biltong with the chair like he was beat up by the 18 Shaolin brassmen. The judge also praises the chair and begins to describe its secret, which is its facility of use, as Stephen continues to beat up Bull Tong with it. With 3 minutes remaining on the clock, both rush in to finish the dish. As the final ingredients go inside, the manager appears to be scheming something. Stephen, sensing that something is amiss, realized what's going to happen and immediately throws away the pot. The judge catches it, which promptly explodes at his face. Still alive, he forgives Stephen and urged him to make another one. As Bull Tong mocks him and finalizes his dish, Stephen prepares some meat and rice and proceeds to move like the yin-yang symbol. After a graceful finish, he poised ready to strike. He then started to apply kung fu to the meat, which Bull Tong thought was the Kume hand, but the monk said that he's using the sorrowful hand which Stephen developed himself. He learned it from his extreme sorrow of losing the shop lady. The monk, having an existential crisis, saw how remorseful Stephen was. The monk forgave him and let him go to the competition. Stephen mixes the salt and begins to skewer the meat. He turned on the stove, places the meat there, and then boosted the fire for his rice. With much concentration, he finished cooking the meat, plated the rice and begins plating his dish. With a flourish of a knife, he slices the pork, puts the garnish on the plate, and produces a flame on his bare hands. He begins to cook an egg on it. The judge was very much impressed with the Shaolin fire fist. The egg gently lands on the plate. The match was over and the 2 dishes are presented. The judge tried the Buddha jumping wall first and was greatly impressed by how good it was. She explained that the 9 ingredients make up 81 varieties and that the flavors will all stack up. She tries Stephen's sorrowful rice next, but Tom protested that it was just a cheap ordinary barbecue rice with just an extra egg, and called it sorry-full rice. But when the judge tried it, she was immediately blown away by how great it tastes. She claims that it was the best barbecue ever cooked. She then went on and on at how all the ingredients were so flavorful, and the fire fist egg helped a lot on the dish. She then lamented at the possibility of not being able to eat another barbecue this good in the future. With much distress, she fainted then and there on the restaurant floor. The judge was actually blackmailed by the manager to forcefully declare that Tong is the winner. Suddenly the skies opened up and a bright ray of light descended upon everyone at the restaurant. 3 deities appeared and told Stephen that he was actually a fairy who was punished to live a life as an ordinary person on Earth. The manager, unable to believe what's happening, grabbed a shotgun and began shooting at the deities. In retaliation, the deities turned the manager into a cute bulldog. Bull Tong then also grabbed a shotgun but stopped immediately when threatened. The deities weren't convinced and shot a rainbow at Tong. After the deities left, Tong was so happy to know that he was okay and that they've got nothing against him. Suddenly, he looked down and started screaming. There was actually a large hole in his gut from the blast. Fast forward a little, Stephen is now successful again and so is his gang. The man told him that the shop lady survived the gunshot since the bullet hit her gold teeth. After getting it fixed and plastic surgery, she is back to being pretty. And this is where the story ends.